I once had a friend who collected animal heads. All kinds of animal heads. Big heads, small heads, furry heads, even bug heads. He would stuff them, freeze them, do whatever he could to preserve them. Some still ended up looking mutated, but regardless, he treasured all of them. Well, there was one he treasured the most. A few weeks ago, he was walking through a cornfield and tripped over something, causing him to fall hard against the packed dirt and long stalks. At first, he was furious and stood up quickly to lash out at whatever the foreign object was that had caused him to stumble. But when he saw what it was, he froze, and his mouth fell open in awe. It was a human head. A woman's head. I'm not exactly sure what he was thinking when he picked it up and threw it in his backpack, but given the abnormality of the situation, I don't know how many of us would have been able to think straight. It wasn't just that it was a random decapitated head lying in a cornfield. It was the head itself. It was strange, not quite right, and my friend noticed it right away. When he got home, he retreated into his basement sanctuary and pulled his morbid treasure out of his bag, carefully turning the head around in his gloved hands, trying to figure out how or why it had been removed from its body, and why it seemed so incorrect. The skin was supple and squishy, the mouth puckered and pink, the hair was tawny and fine, almost feathered, as it felt like silk to the touch. And even though the eyes were open, and really should have been glassy, blank, and dry, he said they shone a bright green, as though there was still some intelligence to be found within. When he flipped the head over and carefully washed the dirt away from the neck, he gasped. Instead of seeing the bloody red color of muscle and the white color of bone, and smelling the tainted stench of rot, he saw the color black within the neck. It was like tar, but not as shiny. It was as if what was filling the head was the absence of something, but that couldn't be. The head had weight to it. It wasn't just some hollow prop or animatronic. Now keep in mind, this is all what he told me. I wasn't sure. I pictured the head being old, wrinkled, and rotted with sunken cheeks and gray lips that peeled back showing blackened teeth underneath, and smelled absolutely putrid. I never got an opportunity to see if the inside was filled with blackness as he said, but my friend was very insistent. I finally got to see the head. It was locked in a glass box sitting on a table, unthreatening, motionless, and silent. Before I got the chance to see it, I never believed him. A human head in the middle of a cornfield, perfectly preserved? There's absolutely no way. I figured it had to be fake, and that my friend had mistaken it for the real deal, despite his supposed prowess in the field of taxonomy. But he was my friend after all, and so I decided to humor him. After I saw the head, he asked me to accompany him back to the cornfield where he found it. I agreed. What can I say? I was curious. It took us a short while to get to the place. It was out in the middle of nowhere, and in the distance I could hear thunder and see the dark, ominous shapes of storm clouds rolling in. I asked if we were close. He shook his head violently, saying nothing. I sighed and I looked at my phone, checking to see if there was any service, and of course there wasn't. After another 30 minutes of walking, he stopped abruptly, and around us the tall stalks of corn swayed with the wind as the storm moved closer. The air smelled of rain. So, is this finally the place? Are we... Hey! I turned and saw the back of my friend disappearing into the stalks. I quickly ran after him, knocking aside the stalks of corn haphazardly as I went. What the hell, man? Were you just going to leave me? He didn't say anything and kept walking forward, his eyes focused on the ground. He made a sharp left and picked up his pace, nearly jogging. The sun was starting to disappear, and combined with the approaching storm and the insanely tall stalks of corn, I could barely see in front of me anymore. I nearly tripped as I ran into something solid and realized it was my friend who had stopped and was kneeling down in the dirt. Dude, will you stop zoning out and talk to me? What's going on? What exactly are you looking for? My friend responded with a voice that was raw and visceral, and I stared at him in disbelief, unsure if he was trying to scare me or if he had legitimately lost his mind.
It's here.
What's here? Another head? The body? I tried to lighten the mood as I grew increasingly unsettled with his behavior.
The dream I had. The head gave it to me. It's here.
I looked back the way we just came from, half tempted to just leave him out here overnight. I sighed. So you had a dream the head spoke to you? That's fucked up, dude. Why didn't you mention this before? What is here exactly?
The necklace.
So the only reason you wanted me to come out here was because you had a dream that the head told you to find a necklace? For real, dude? What would a severed head need a necklace for? I mean, a hat I can understand. As my friend started to dig in the dirt with his bare hands, it began to dawn on me that I had made a huge mistake coming out here with him. He had clearly lost his sanity, and I wasn't positive I could drag him back to reality or find the way back home myself. I decided to try and test him with a soft threat. Hey man, I think I'm gonna go back. It's getting dark. Is that cool? He didn't reply, so I just shrugged and began walking away. I figured at any moment I would hear him call out after me, but he didn't. Now, if you've ever walked through a cornfield, I mean a real one, not one of those spooky Halloween corn mazes, then you know how easy it is to get turned around. Luckily, the storm helped guide me slightly, since I knew which direction the wind had been blowing from. But if the rain started to fall, I knew my sense of direction would abandon me entirely. I had walked for only about 3 minutes when I saw it. There was a house in the middle of the cornfield, stalks growing right up against its walls and windows. It wasn't a small house either, like some kind of shed. I mean, it was an actual 2-story dwelling with a front door and a garage, despite the fact there was no driveway. On top of that, it looked very well kept too. Not at all like an abandoned house should look like. Aside from not having a satellite dish on the roof, it would have fit in perfectly amongst the homes on my street. The windows were open despite the approaching storm, and I could make out someone moving around inside. It was either a child or perhaps a short woman. I couldn't tell. Maybe about 5 feet tall. Whoever they were, I could see them through the living room into the kitchen, where they appeared to be standing by the counter.
Yes! I found it!
I nearly screamed as my friend approached me from behind, holding something out in his grubby hands. Christ, don't sneak up on me like that, you idiot! He held up in his hand and showed me a black ribbon with a single silver heart charm hanging from it. I glanced in confused irritation from his face to the necklace and back to him again. Okay, that's an insanely lucky coincidence, but setting that aside, you're really not going to ask about this house just sitting here in the middle?
Shh. She's waiting.
He interrupted me by raising a finger to his lips. Did you just shush me? He pointed to the house and knelt down, setting his backpack on the ground. Look, I don't know what's going on, but I'm out of here. This has become way too Twilight Zone for me to handle.
No.
His scream made me jump slightly, not because of the volume, but because of the sudden harsh darkness in his voice.
You can't go. She wants me, but I thought maybe that if I brought you...
Dude, hold up. Who is she? And what the fuck are you talking about? He unzipped his backpack and pulled out the head. I leapt back in genuine terror. It wasn't the head, at least not how I had seen it. It was fresh, rosy-cheeked, alive. It was grinning from ear to ear, its eyes wide open, and when its green irises found my own blue ones, it winked. I screamed and spun around, making a dash into the corn. A howl rose up from somewhere in the field, and at first I thought he was chasing me, until the sound grew higher. It wasn't behind me, it was around me, cornering me, paralyzing me. I continued to sprint through the corn without looking back, and suddenly I stumbled into a clearing, and found myself standing in the exact spot I had just sprinted away from a few seconds earlier, in the shadow of the house, with my friend standing there, with the head in his hand, like the headless horseman with his pumpkin. That was impossible. I had just ran in a straight line. I clasped my hands over my ears in pain. The head was screaming, its mouth wide open, wailing like a banshee. My friend smiled.
She's been torturing me ever since I took her from here. Whispering, disrupting my dreams, punishing me. But not anymore. She's forgiven me because I brought her you.
I punched him as hard as I could, causing him to stumble backwards and drop the head, which went tumbling into the stalks of corn. I made a run past him and decided to try my luck again in the corn, but he grabbed my ankle and held me strong. Without hesitating, I kicked him over and over again, breaking his nose, blackening his eyes, and causing blood to fly as two of his teeth broke. His grasp finally loosened, and I broke free. I glanced back and saw my friend rolling in the dirt, sobbing and screaming. The head was nowhere in sight, but behind him I saw a short dark figure had appeared. Its arm was outstretched and pointed directly at me. The figure was headless. I ran. I shut my eyes and sprinted forward, keeping my hands up in front of me, parting my way through the corn as best I could, the stalks cutting into my arms and palms as I went. After what seemed like an hour of running, I felt myself emerge from the corn, and I opened my eyes. I had sprinted directly out into a dirt road that I didn't recognize. I must have gotten turned around and exited on a different side of the cornfield. I saw a pair of headlights in the distance up the road and made for them, waving my arms in desperation. It was a pickup truck, probably a farmer on his way home. He pulled over when he saw me.
Hey kid, you okay? Gosh, looks as though you've seen a ghost. Climb in.
I hopped into the passenger seat and thanked him, glad to be out of the corn, but my mind was still racing from what just happened. Had I legitimately just seen what I thought I had? A laughing severed head and a decapitated body pointing at me. Had I been drugged? Was this some kind of horrific prank? I looked down at my sneaker and saw my friend's blood on it. Well, if it was a prank, I had ruined the moment.
My name's Cooper. Strange weather to be out in, kid. And at nightfall, too. What were you doing out here? You know I could charge you for trespassing.
I had no idea what to say, but I decided to risk looking crazy just to see if I really was. Is there a house in your cornfield? The reaction was almost immediate. The man's face went ghostly white, and he immediately slowed the truck down. For a moment, I thought he was going to throw me out.
What did you just say?
I saw a house. My voice trailed off, and suddenly I was too overwhelmed to say any more. The truck rolled to a stop, and the farmer ran a hand down his face, and for a few moments, the only sound was the patter of rain on the roof.
You didn't go inside the house, did you?
I shook my head.
There was no one else with you?
I shook my head again, but didn't look him in the eye.
Okay, listen to me. You didn't see anything, you hear me? Give me your phone.
I handed it over without hesitating. He smashed it against the dashboard a few times, then tossed it out the window. Then he put the truck into drive, and we started up the road again in silence. Once we made it back into town, he dropped me off at the corner of my neighborhood. As I climbed out, he looked me in the eye.
Remember, you didn't see anything.
I nodded, and he slammed the door shut and took off down the road. I wandered back to my house in a daze, not sure if I was going to tell my friend's parents about what happened to him, or if I should just feign ignorance and pretend like the whole thing never happened. When I got back home, I locked the front door behind me, went down the dark hall and into my room, and began to take off my wet clothes. I was contemplating making an anonymous call to the police when I felt something strange in my sneaker. As I pulled it off, out onto the carpet, fell the silver charm on a black ribbon that my friend must have stuffed into my shoe when he was holding me. As I picked it up, my blood turned to ice water, and suddenly from right outside the front door came the exact same ear-splitting wail I had left behind in the cornfield.
There's always a reason to be afraid.